Bones. 1 mana for an 0/3 defender. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like both Dimir and Golgari want some amount of surveilling going on. And they both seem like slower tribes. So, 1 mana for an 0/3. Why not, right? Why the fuck not? 4 mana for a 3/1 flyer bats. Pretty standard inclusion in sets recently. It's fine, whatever. Blood Operative. 3 mana for a 3/1 lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target card from a graveyard. So that ability is kind of relevant. Usually that ability would only be relevant in like constructed play if someone like built their deck around graveyard synergies. That said, this is a limited format where people are actually doing stuff with their graveyard. So that's not irrelevant at all. And then whenever you surveil, if it's in your graveyard, you can pay 3 life to rebuy it. Yeah, I think this card's quite good. I think it's quite good. I think there's enough surveil constructed worthy cards too that Blood Operative will probably make it into your constructed control dirty decks. Maybe a 1 of in the main deck just to like get value off your surveils. Maybe just in the sideboard for against aggro decks. Seems good. Yeah, no, it's got lifelink. I know. I'm aware. I'm aware. So the lifelink is gonna even if you're just trading with a creature, even if you're just trading off with your opponent's creature, the lifelink's gonna pay for the paying 5 life to rebuy it eventually. It triggers off itself being surveilled. Oh, that is sweet. Anyway. Burglar Rat. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Pretty overpowered and 2-headed giant, if I do say so myself. But yeah, no, this card's good. Ravenous Rats saw plenty of constructed play. This card will probably see some constructed play. Dies to Chain Whirler. Yeah, but you already got your value. Who gives a shit? They already had to discard. Child of Night, reprint, yada yada. Creeping Chill's interesting. 4 mana, deals 3 damage to each opponent, you gain 3 life. It's put into your graveyard from your library. You may exile it. If you do, it domes each opponent for 3, and you gain 3 life. So it basically casts if you ever, like, surveil it into your graveyard. What standard decks want this rat? Well, no current ones. I saw someone talking about it in Modern, for their Modern Rats deck. It looked interesting. The guy that was, fuck, do I have a link for that? I think I have a link for that somewhere. Yeah, Zach Elsick was tweeting about it. I think it's in my recent likes on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, Ravenous Rats saw play in Standard pretty much every time that it's been printed, right? It's intuitive, the Burglar Rat, which is pretty much just the same thing, would be the same. Yeah, I lied to you, Pinfeldorf. Yeah, that's the, this is the art I was talking about. Yeah, Zach Elsick was talking about it replacing, I posted a link in the chat. You never saw the old standard decks with it? Well, there was, the one that comes to mind was the black-white, ninja deck that played, Ravenous Rats and Chittering Rats back in, alongside, like, ninjas, black-white stuff, you know? Anyway. It was a thing. It was a thing for sure. But yeah, this is a Zach Elsick brew with Swarm Yard of all kinds. And he was saying that you could just replace the Sanity Gnars and have less of a reliance on red mana. Sanity Gnars being a 3-mana card too, so you're also slimming your curve a little bit. That's a sweet value here. Obviously, not a Modern powerhouse, but kind of sweet. People are tinkering around with it for Modern, right? Do I think Rat and Freebooter stack well, or does the effect diminish? Usually those sort of effects do stack well. Because you're just, like, draining the opponent's shit. Burglar Rat is the sort of card that stacks pretty well. Freebooter, if your opponent only has, like, the 1 spell, the next Freebooter is more likely to brick, right? Freebooter is the card that's going to have diminishing returns, whereas Burglar Rat, the more Burglar Rats that you cast, the less options your opponent's going to have when discarding, and the more likely that you're going to get a card that they need. Deadweight has seen a little bit of constructed play. I've gotten it back with some Sun Titans for sure. Removal, 1 mana, -2/-2. Not as good as the instant, but every once in a while, the fact that it's an enchantment that sticks around, just like shrinking a larger creature, is good. So it could. I'm mentioning that because it could hypothetically see Constructed play in the standard format. It probably won't, but it could. And obviously, it's a very good limited card. Great limited card. There's a lot of good black commons, and this is probably in the top 3 for sure. Deadly Visit, destroy target creatures, surveil 2. This one's hard to evaluate because 5 mana is a lot of mana. It's probably intended to be priced around the same as similar 5 mana destroy a creature cards, like the one that gave us 3 treasure or whatever recently. Last time it saw play because Delirium is sweet. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so Deadweight's seen play in multiple standard formats, huh? Here comes the best mythic. Possibly. It's certainly a fucking good one, right? Yeah, this is a card that just has amazing stats, right? Obviously pushed for constructed play. 5 mana for a 6/6 flying trample, and then you can pay 2 life to surveil 2. So however much life you want to pay, you can dig to find more gas. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pay pretty much all the life into this card. I think I'm gonna do that. Not convinced that it's necessarily the best mythic of the format, but it's certainly quite good. Anytime you have this big old wall of text and abilities on a card, especially one that's like clearly pushed, gonna be pretty sweet. Sick cube card, yeah. Is it modern playable? Well, most 5 cards are not modern playable. I think this card's worse than Scarab God in modern, right? Being able to pay 2 life to surveil 2 is really interesting as an enabler in modern and legacy, but goddamn, 5 mana is too much for an enabler. You know what I mean? It's just too much. I don't think so. I don't think it's modern playable. You've been playing it in Necrotic Ooze. Oh yeah, it kind of works in Necrotic Ooze, doesn't it? You can just pay life until you find a Grizzlebrand. It does seem sweet in that deck. Necrotic Ooze is like borderline playable though, right? Dowser of Lights, 5 mana for a 4/5. Solid vanilla. Gruesome Menagerie, 5 mana. Choose a creature card with convert mana cost 1 in your graveyard. Then do the same for creature cards with convert mana cost 2 or 3. Return those to the battlefield. Yeah, if this put the cards in your hand, it would be really, really bad. Putting them into the battlefield is okay. It seems really... You almost need to like hit multiple creatures though, and you're just not rebuying any of your bombs. You're getting a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a 3-drop. Seems hard. Seems hard for this card to be worth it, to be worth building around, and to get max value. I don't like it. Flavor text dramatic read on the vanilla, please. I can probably do that. Dowser of Lights. The party of Rakdos revelers cackled and capered as the thing approached. It hissed and they jabbed their torches at it, giggling when it recoiled. Then, one by one, the torches went out, and the screaming began. Iron Poisoner, 1 mana, 1/1 Death Touch. Pretty good limited card. I really like the 1 mana, 1/1 Death Touchers. They see played in like a lot of limited formats. There's a few different ways of pinging 1/1s in this format. Red has got a few different ways of doing that. But the Poisoner, man. The place that it really shines is in the Black Mirror, in the Golgari Mirror, where your opponent's just making these giant creatures, and you're just like, bam, 1 mana, 1/1 Death Touch. What are you gonna do? And they have to use like a real removal spell on it before they can start attacking, or they just have to accept they're gonna trade a good creature for your 1-drop. Yeah, one drops aren't always playable. They certainly are in this format though. Crawl Swarm, 5 mana for a 4/1 flyer. Discard a creature card, return it from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, if you could do this and return it to play, it would be interesting for constructed, but you can't, so it's not. Good and limited, though. Certainly good and limited. Lawless Giant, 7 mana for a 6/5 Undergrowth. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. Yep, it's another one. Too expensive for constructed, I imagine. Pretty good and limited. I might be underrating like some engine that makes this good for constructed, where you just like one-shot someone with it. You know, there might be like some reanimation spell or combo piece with it. There might be some deck that's just really good at doing one thing that wants it as the win con, but that's the corner case scenario. 7's really high. 7's really high. You probably don't want to cast this card in constructed. I think the limited format though, I think the Golgari decks are slow enough, and I think they have enough blockers that this card's probably going to be good and limited. Mausoleum Secrets, 2 mana, instant Undergrowth. Search your library for a black card with convert mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Reveal it, put in your hand. Yeah, so this has some interesting conditions. It has to be a black card, and that card has to have a cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So it's hard to imagine this one, this tutor breaking Legacy, right? You're probably not cracking LED in response to Mausoleum Secrets anytime soon. I will be surprised if it finds a home in Standard, but it could. Who fucking knows, right? All right, Mephetic Vapors. 3 mana, all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn with Surveil 2. Usually when you put a utility ability on these situational cards, they become a lot more main deckable. It becomes like a lot more main deck filler. You can play it to plink a few dorks if you're facing Boros. You can use it as a post-combat combat trick. It is a sorcery, so you're not going to be able to blow someone out mid-combat. But you can like attack, and they block, and then you use this to trade up in post-combat while you get some value off the Surveil. Not super exciting. Definitely filler if you're main decking it. Not the worst sideboard card. Midnight Reaper. 3 mana for a 3/2. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. Yeah, this card's interesting. It's it's like pretty good in limited play, because a lot of the times your creatures end up trading off, and you can kind of suicide creatures if they're no good anymore. Like in Cube, you'll often suicide Solemn Simulacrum just to draw a card when you need a card, and this will let you do that with whatever. If you play it when you're already low on life, though, there's a real danger in the 1 damage to you mattering. No, that does trigger off of itself, so you can always just like trade it, not care about the rest. You think Midnight Reaper is going to be a modern all-star? I don't think so. I don't know. No. I'm not even sure like how much standard play it's going to see. It kind of reminds me of Zathrid Necromancer. You guys remember that card, the 3 mana 2/2? Then every time a creature you control died, or a human rather, you would get a 2/2 tapped or whatever. Card was good. It saw play in engine decks and as like a sideboard against control. And I think that's what Midnight Reaper is. I don't think it's breaking any formats, but it's situationally quite good. Moodmark Painter, 2 black, 2/3 Undergrowth. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gains menace and gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Oh man, that's kind of zesty. It's kind of a zesty common. That seems like a solid Golgari card, right? Murder some faces, why not? Necrotic Wound. 1 black, instant, Undergrowth. Target creature gets neg-X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Well, that's actually kind of interesting. -X doesn't have to be very much for a card like this to be playable in limited. And if there is some kind of like self-mill, put a bunch of creatures in my graveyard deck in Constructed, this sort of card could go from just like being stone unplayable to being quite interesting. I'm probably not first picking this in limited because it's so situational. Like you kind of need to be that deck, and it's not like a huge payoff for being in that deck. It's just like a removal spell. So I'm taking like good removal over this, less situational removal over this. But once I'm in that archetype, this just becomes really, really good. Like probably better than most removal. Play with Stitcher's Supplier, sure. Yeah, whatever. Never happened. 2 and a black, sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from that player's graveyard or hand and exile it. Sure, yeah. This is a card that if it costs 2 mana, if Never Happened costs 2 mana, it would be constructed interesting. But it doesn't. It costs 3, so I just don't see it. In Sealed, you could probably get away with main decking this, and it's probably like an actively good sideboard card for your more bomby opponents. I'm probably not playing this in draft ever. Pilfering Imp, 1 mana for a 1/1 flyer, and then you can pay 2 mana to sack it to duress your opponent. Kind of interesting. Anytime you've got disruption with a body attached. So you play it as a 1 mana 1/1 on turn 1. You get in a few attacks, and then you sack it the turn before your opponent would play like Settle Wreckage or Teferi or something, and get their key card. Sounds interesting, right? The bad thing is when you top deck this card, the turn before they're gonna play their sweeper, it's got fucking Summoning Sickness. It's got goddamn Summoning Sickness, so you can't crack it. I think without the tap activation on this card, I think it'd be quite good. I think it'd be interesting. I think it'd be interesting for constructed play, but with the tap ability, I'm off it. I'm like, nah. I think the reason they gave it the tap ability is they were worried about potential loops. Like you sack it, you rebuy it, you sack it, and you just like drain the opponent's hand if you have like an efficient way to rebuy it. But I don't know if that's a good reason. I just don't think it's gonna be good enough. Plaguecrafter is interesting though. 2 and a black, 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. This card is sick. Yeah, I played plenty of the 3-mana 3/1 where each player sacrifices a creature. I played that card. It's good in some formats, good against some decks, just naturally. Answer to your control opponents like Hexproof, Beater. But this is sick. This is sick. The reason that this is sick is because it's a sack outlet for your creatures that want to be sacked. So that's the sort of the deck that you're going to play this in. And then it's just always good. Unlike Fleshbag Marauder or whatever the fuck it's called, this card is always good. If your opponent doesn't have a creature to sack, they have to sack a Planeswalker, right? So your control opponents that just like played Teferi, you've got an answer. You can also play the Plaguecrafter, sack it, they sack their Teferi, assuming you're not even sacking like a worse creature and like upgrading it to a 3/2 or getting some like leave play effect. Seems great. And then if they don't have either, right? If they don't have a creature or a planeswalker, they have to discard a card. So earlier I was talking about how Burglar Rat has like Ravenous Rats has seen standard play before and like could again. That sort of drain resources mentality is the sort of deck that a card like Plaguecrafter could be really, really good in. And they go well together, right? Ravenous Rats into this, now you're sacking the 1/1 body and you have a 3/2 and they have to sack the one creature they have or the one planeswalker they have, or they have to discard a card, like another card after already having discarded to the rat. Yeah, things are starting to cook. Things are cooking. Price of Fame, 3 and a black. Costs 2 less if you're targeting a legendary creature. Destroy target creature, surveil 2. Even with the cost reduction to destroy a legendary creature, this is not constructed playable. That said, it's fucking sick and limited. The legendary creature discount clause is almost misleading because it's like trying to trick you into thinking that you should play it in constructed, but it's actually just nuts in limited. And if the 2 less ever comes up, it's whatever. EDH playable. Oh, the Price of Fame. That's probably it. That's probably what the cost reduction is for, to make this card like interesting for EDH, and it does that. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I don't know. This might be the best black uncommon for limited. It's really, really good. Destroy a creature, surveil 2, instant speed, 4 mana. Hell yeah, right? Hell yeah. Ritual of Soot, 2 black, destroy all creatures with convert mana cost 3 or less. Not bad, not bad at all. This is the sort of card that you can like build your deck around, either in limited or constructed, and just get insane value off your opponents. The fact that one of the guilds is based around tokens, token production. Boros is trying to like aggro you with cheap threats. Celestia is like making tokens and stuff. Makes me think that Ritual of Soot is going to be good enough to main deck most of the time in limited, and it's going to be situationally good in constructed. Several strands, 1 and a black. An additional cost is cast a spell, sack a creature. You gain life equal to its toughness. Destroy target creature and opponent controls. Yeah, this is the sort of card that you play when you like don't quite have enough removal, or if you have enough like piddly creatures that you want to sacrifice, or if your opponent has a ton of pacifism effects and you want to convert the useless creature into a valuable body in the graveyard while you kill one of the opponent's premium cards. But other than those instances, you don't really want it. Spinal Centipede, 2 and a black, 3/2. When it dies, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Yeah, sure, whatever. It's fine. This is a mentor format, so if you can pump your mentor creatures, that's pretty good. This is a way to do that. We've already seen some creatures that want to sacrifice too, including the next one up in line here. So having creatures that give you value when you sack them, not the worst. Undercity Necrolisk, 3 and a black, 3/3. Sack another creature, put a 1/1 counter on it. It gains menace until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So the activate this only anytime you can cast a sorcery ability makes it much, much less broken. Because otherwise you can just like block your opponent's creatures and then sack them and grow your Necrolisk and murder their face. But instead you have to make a much more tense assessment of like how much do I want to load this creature up. You can't sack for free. You can't like block sack or whatever, or attack sack. Or sack in response to removal. Anyway. Still an interesting card. Golgari is a deck that... Golgari is is a color pair that wants to get creatures in the graveyard. This is a way to do that. It's a way to load up. It's a way to win the game. You'll see some play for sure. 4 mana for the 3/3 is like already fine, right? Veiled Shade, 2 and a black, 2/2. 2 mana, fucking Shade Pump. Yeah, alright. Late game mana sink. I'm on board. Vicious Rumors, 1 black. Deals 1 damage to each opponent. Each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. You gain 1 life. Interesting. Not good, but interesting. Whispering Snitch, 1 and a black. Whenever you surveil for the first time each turn, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Also interesting. How many times do you need to trigger this for it to be good and limited? 2 mana for a 1/3 body is like already solid, right? I think if you trigger it like 2 or 3 times, you're doing pretty good. It kind of reminds me of the Orzhov ability, where you could like every time you played a card, you could pay a white or black mana to drain the opponent for 1. This isn't as good as that, but if you have a very dedicated surveil deck, it could be worthwhile.